Yeah.
for these weapons, because part of the thing of straw purchasers for cartels is that they
Yeah.
recruit people who have clean records so that when the background check happens, it doesn't set off any alarms. Other people bring up that in other countries, governments will have check-in systems where it's like someone from the government will go to your house to make sure you still have the weapon and how many bullets you have to accompany that weapon. So people bring that up. And then I'll say on the other side, even an analyst who I was speaking with mentioned that, for them, there's a lot more that could be done on the US side. And that it would also be good for Mexico to work on border corruption and black market.
Yeah.
As well. But yeah, essentially it's just widespread availability of firearms, and it's, we all know where the gun debate is in the United States, but the cartels are just exploiting what they see as a legal maybe loophole, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
um
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they're finding their people who the straw purchasers that you mentioned that have clean backgrounds. They're paying them to purchase, and
right.
then they're exploiting
but
that side of it. Yeah,
But
it's
in
an
the Mexican
interesting.
government
Yeah.
lawsuit against U.S. gun manufacturers, I will say, they do mention, like, they're not coming after the Second Amendment or anything, but they are, faulting gun companies maybe to selling to sellers that are maybe being irresponsible in their sales. And so that tends to be the argument, is that it's not like every gun seller in the United States is like unwittingly filtering guns to Mexican cartels. The Mexican government's lawsuit argument, and on the US side, their lawyers, a guy named John Lowy, they really harp on just there are, this bunch of gun sellers that are selling into the cartels, and so people being more responsible around that.
Is that what you mentioned earlier about another layer of the what guns manufacturers themselves? Is that the layer that you were talking about? Is kind
Well,
of
so
their
there's this lawsuit that is going to be heard in the U.S. Supreme Court next month. The U.S. Supreme Court is hearing the Mexican government's lawsuit against U.S. gun manufacturers, and yeah, I mean, we'll see what shakes out of that, because you know in the Mexican government lawsuit, they're saying, one, gun manufacturers are tailoring guns like for cartels. I think that they have guns called, like, hold on, let me pull it up here, but it's they have guns that are sort of a special edition for the Mexican Revolution. They have another gun called, like, El Jefe, and stuff that really seems to be catering to the Mexican market. And then, yeah,
interesting.
selling to gun stores that are irresponsible with their sales.
Yeah, I hear that. I didn't know that lawsuit was happening. I think there's a lot of layers to this that are interesting. I had a guest that we talked about. What do you think the answer would be to helping with some of the guns that are going south? And he mentioned we have checkpoints going north. Why don't we have checkpoints going south? And I thought that was a great idea that I've never heard before, and I think would probably bring some value to slowing down some of that southbound traffic that involves guns. And I just don't know how else to do it. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, the U.S. government, claims that they're going after some of these networks and gun smugglers. Under Biden, I believe the Safer Communities Act, there was harsher sentences for straw purchasers, and the Justice Department said they were going after more of these networks, like the ones that I recounted in my story. That's part of it. I've heard the checkpoint thing thrown around. So there are a lot of things that various people have thrown out. And it is a big sticking point between the United States and Mexico, right? Because the United States, wants more to be done on fentanyl, and Mexico wants more to be done on guns. And the Mexican position is like, it's not like fentanyl's legal here. Like, you guys literally just have guns that are legal over there, and they're flooding over the border. And so that's sort of right. That is such a sticking point between the two countries. Is the United States screams about the drugs flowing in, and Mexico's like, well, you guys are producing the demand for the drugs as it is, and you're producing the firearms. So when you talk to a Mexican politician, they're kind of like, all of the economic and physical power of the cartels comes from the United States.
Yeah, I can see that argument. I could also counter that argument with, Mexico hasn't done a very good job in countering the cartel, right? Which so much corruption, you know what I mean? Almost giving them more fuel, giving them more power, and in turn, them using guns to help with their power, to almost consume more power. And it's one of those conversations.
It's
Like I said, I think people will be so divided, and it'll go every direction. What I
totally, I
find
mean,
fascinating, yeah,
both
I think,
governments, I always leave it as like, everyone could be doing better.
yeah, I think we as the viewers of this should be educated on the fact that this is happening internal into small cities across the nation. These three that you talked about, from Colorado to Vegas to Wisconsin, it is not going to be a surprise to find out in many other cities across America there is guns being purchased by straw purchasers that are getting transported and smuggled back into Mexico in the hands of the cartel. And so for those who are listening to know that, maybe, just maybe, this maybe puts some of these gun businesses a little bit more, I guess, on edge in paying attention to some of these big rifle purchases that might be a sign of that those individuals are a part of some kind of smuggling network. If that's all we do with this episode, then to me it brings value, right?
Yeah, and I mean, that was sort of I mean, this was my source's reasoning for uh you know giving me as much information as they gave me, which is, this is not really about race. I mean, it's about Racine, but it's about the Racines of the United States. They're like, you can
Correct.
take this model and pick it up and put it all across the United States. And at this
Yeah.
point, again, right, it is the border states that make up a lot of the firearms that are recovered. That's, I mean, in and of itself, that's its own sort of metric, right? But people, I think they've traced guns to maybe all like 50 states or something.